He only wanted a quick energy drink before heading back to work. Instead, a racist cop turned the moment into a nightmare, mocking his badge, pointing a gun, and treating him like a criminal. But what the officer didn't know is that this man was no ordinary driver. He was an FBI senior agent, calm under pressure and waiting for the truth to speak for itself. Curious how the tables turned? Before we explore the whole story, sit back, relax, hit like, and subscribe for more gripping stories like this. James Carter eased his black SUV into the parking lot of a Sunoco gas station just off Parham Road in Richmond, Virginia. It was a crisp Wednesday morning in October, the kind where the air felt sharp and the sky hung low with gray clouds. The clock on his dashboard read 8:47 a.m., late enough for rush hour to clog the nearby intersections with folks heading to offices or dropping kids at school. James, a 45-year-old FBI senior agent, had been up since 5 a.m., working a case that kept him on the road. All he wanted was a quick stop for a Red Bull to keep him sharp for the long day ahead. His charcoal suit was crisp, no tie, just a white shirt and a small earpiece tucked in his right ear. The FBI badge clipped to his belt stayed hidden unless you looked close. He parked near the edge of the lot, away from the pumps, next to a beat-up dumpster and a flickering Redbox machine. Richmond was home for James, born and raised in the East End, a Marine veteran before he joined the Bureau. He knew these streets, the rhythm of the city, the way people moved through their mornings. But today, he was just passing through, a man in a hurry who didn't want to stand out. The Sunoco was busy. 2 pickup trucks at the pumps, a mom in yoga pants filling her minivan, an older guy in a flannel jacket checking his tires. Inside, the store smelled of burnt coffee and cleaning spray. James grabbed a Red Bull from the cooler, nodded to the clerk, a young woman with pink hair and a bored expression, and paid in cash. He was back outside in under 2 minutes, the cold can in his hand, ready to hit the road. Across the lot, Officer Michael Hargrove sat in his patrol car, a Henrico County cruiser parked crooked near the air pump. Hargrove, 38, broad-shouldered with a crew cut, had been on the force for a decade. He was the kind of cop who trusted his gut, and right now his gut was telling him something about the black SUV with tinted windows and federal plates didn't belong here. He watched James step out of the store, saw the suit, the confident walk, the way he scanned the lot without seeming to. To Hargrove, it didn't add up. This wasn't D.C. or some federal hotspot. This was Henrico, his turf, and guys like James, tall, black, dressed too sharp for a gas station stop, raised red flags. Hargrove's radio crackled, but he ignored it. He stepped out of his cruiser, one hand resting on his holster, aviators hiding his eyes despite the overcast sky. He didn't call for backup or run the plates. Instead, he locked his gaze on James, who was halfway to his SUV, and made a split-second call. "Hey, you with that vehicle?" he called out, his voice sharp, cutting through the hum of morning traffic. James paused, turned, and sized up the officer. This wasn't his first time being questioned, and he had a feeling it wouldn't be his last. James Carter stood just a few steps from his SUV, the cold Red Bull still in his hand, when Officer Michael Hargrove's voice sliced through the morning air. "Hey, you with that vehicle?" Hargrove's tone was sharp, like he was already sure something was wrong. James turned slowly, meeting the officer's gaze. Hargrove stood by his cruiser, hand on his holster, aviators glinting despite the cloudy sky. The Sunoco lot buzzed with the usual morning chaos, pumps beeping, a semi-rumbling down Parham Road. But James felt the weight of eyes starting to turn his way. He kept his posture easy, his voice steady. "Yes, sir, that's my vehicle," he said, nodding toward the black SUV with federal plates. Hargrove didn't blink. "License, registration, and ID, now," he barked, taking a step closer, his boots loud on the asphalt. James raised an eyebrow, sizing up the situation. He'd been here before. Not at this gas station, but in moments where his suit, his badge, his very presence seemed to spark suspicion. "Sir, I'm on official duty," he said calmly. "I'm Special Agent James Carter, FBI. I can show you my credentials if you'd like." He kept his hands visible. The Red Bull can hold loosely, no sudden moves. Hargrove's jaw tightened, his hand now gripping the holster. "FBI, huh?" he scoffed, his voice dripping with disbelief. "Everybody's got a story. You don't look like you're from around here. Let's see that ID and don't try anything funny." The words hit like a jab, but James didn't flinch. He knew the drill. Stay calm, stay alive. A few people in the lot started to notice. An older man in a flannel jacket near Pump 3 paused, his phone half raised. A woman in a business suit by the store entrance stopped texting, her eyes flicking between James and Hargrove. James took a slow breath. "My badge is in my jacket pocket," he said, his voice even, like he was reading a weather report. "I'll reach for it slowly." Hargrove's hand shot to his gun, yanking it from the holster. "Hands where I can see him!" he shouted. The barrel pointed at James's chest. The woman by the entrance gasped, her phone now up, recording. The older man's camera was rolling too, his hands shaky but steady enough to catch it all. James set the Red Bull can on the ground, careful not to break eye contact. "I'm not a threat," he said, his voice still level. He knelt, one knee on the cold asphalt, and laced his fingers behind his head. The lot felt smaller now, the air heavier. Hargrove circled him, gun still drawn, his boots scuffing the pavement. "You think you're slick, huh?" he muttered. "Fancy suit, fancy car. What's in that SUV, stolen? You running something?" James stayed silent. He'd learned long ago that words could twist against you in moments like this. The crowd grew. 5, maybe 6 people now, phones out, whispering. A teenager by the air pump nudged his friend, both filming. Hargrove wasn't done. He strode to James's SUV, yanked the driver's door open, and leaned inside. "Let's see what you're hiding," he said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. James's jaw clenched, but he spoke clearly. "Officer, that's a federal vehicle. You're conducting an unauthorized search." Hargrove snorted, rummaging through the console. He found nothing but a laptop, a water bottle, and an FBI ID clipped to the visor. His face twitched, but he doubled down. "Fake badges are a dime a dozen," he said, stepping back, gun still in hand. "You're not fooling me." The crowd murmured louder now. The older man shook his head, muttering, "This ain't right." The woman by the entrance typed furiously, likely posting the video already. James stayed kneeling, his knees aching against the pavement. But his mind was clear. He'd trained for this, not just as an agent, but as a black man in America. He knew Hargrove wasn't just looking for a crime, he was looking for a reason, and James wasn't going to give him one. Officer Michael Hargrove stood over James Carter, his gun still pointed at the kneeling FBI agent, the Sunoco parking lot in Richmond, Virginia, now a stage for a growing crowd. James's Red Bull can sit on the asphalt, his hands laced behind his head, his suit jacket creased from the awkward position. Hargrove's boots scraped as he paced, his voice sharp with defiance. "You're not fooling anybody with that badge story," he said, glancing at the open door of James's black SUV, where he'd just rummaged through the console, finding only a laptop and an FBI ID. The crowd, now a dozen strong, from a gray-haired man in flannel to a woman in a blazer, filmed with their phones, their whispers turning to murmurs of disbelief. The morning air felt thick, the hum of Parham Road traffic fading under the weight of the moment. James stayed calm, his voice steady despite the gun in his face. "You've opened a federal vehicle without cause," he said, loud enough for the cameras to catch. "You need to stand down." Hargrove's eyes narrowed behind his aviators, his grip tightening on the gun. "Stand down," he snapped. "You don't tell me what to do. I'm the law here." He took a step closer, his shadow falling over James, who didn't move a muscle. The crowd shifted. A teenager by the air pump muttering, "Man, this is messed up," his phone still recording. The woman in the blazer typed furiously, likely live streaming to Facebook. Hargrove seemed to feed off the tension, his voice rising. "What's your real story, huh? You think you can roll through my county in some Fed car and play me?" James didn't answer. Silence was safer. But his eyes flicked to the edge of the lot, where a second black SUV pulled in, quiet and fast, its tinted windows catching the gray light. Hargrove didn't notice the new arrival, too focused on James. The SUV's door opened, and Special Agent Sarah Nguyen stepped out. At 35, Sarah was sharp, her black pantsuit crisp, her dark hair pulled back, an earpiece in place. She moved with purpose, her boots clicking as she crossed the lot. "Carter, status!" she called, her voice cutting through Hargrove's rant. James, still kneeling, answered without turning. "Non-compliant local officer, weapon drawn, unauthorized vehicle search. I've complied fully." Sarah's eyes locked on Hargrove, who spun to face her, gun lowering just an inch. "Who are you?" he demanded, his tone caught between anger and uncertainty. Sarah pulled her credentials from her jacket, holding them up. "Special Agent Sarah Nguyen, FBI. That man is Special Agent James Carter, my superior. You're pointing a gun at a federal officer. Explain yourself." Hargrove blinked, his bravado cracking. "He didn't look like—" he started. But Sarah cut him off. "Didn't look like what? You didn't verify his credentials. You drew a weapon and searched a federal vehicle. That's not protocol. That's a felony." The crowd gasped, phones still rolling. The older man in the flannel shook his head, muttering, "Knew this was wrong." Hargrove's face flushed, but he held his ground, pride keeping him from backing down. "I had reason to suspect—" He tried again, but a low rumble interrupted him. A third SUV, larger and moving fast, screeched into the lot, parking near the gas pumps. Two men stepped out, both in suits, no sunglasses, hands near their holsters, but not drawn. The older of the two, with graying hair and a hard jaw, strode forward. The crowd parted as he approached. "Supervisory Special Agent Daniel Brooks, FBI," the man said, his voice low but commanding. He flashed his badge, holding it long enough for Hargrove to read. "Officer, lower your weapon and step away from Agent Carter." Hargrove froze, the gun still in his hand, his eyes darting between Brooks, Sarah, and the crowd. Brooks's tone sharpened. "So, now." Hargrove's hand trembled, but he finally holstered the gun, stepping back, his chest heaving. Brooks nodded to Sarah, who moved to James. "You good, sir?" she asked. James rose slowly, brushing dust from his pants, his face calm as if he'd just finished a meeting. "I'm fine," he said, adjusting his jacket. The crowd watched, some whispering, others still filming. A woman in her 60s, clutching a grocery bag, said loudly, "That cop needs to answer for this." Brooks turned to Hargrove, his voice cold. "You're under administrative detention. Surrender your weapon." Hargrove's jaw dropped. "You're serious?" he stammered. Brooks didn't blink. "You drew on a federal agent, searched his vehicle without cause, and ignored his credentials. You're lucky you're not in cuffs." One of Brooks's agents stepped forward, hand out. Hargrove, face red, unclipped his holster and handed over the gun, his hands shaking. The crowd erupted in murmurs, a man near the store shouting, "I got it all on video." Brooks glanced at him. "We'll need that footage. Our team will be in touch." James stood quietly, his eyes scanning the crowd. Not angry, not triumphant, just processing. Sarah leaned in. "You handled it like a pro, sir?" James nodded. "Didn't have a choice." The lot felt alive now, phones capturing every second, the weight of what just happened sinking in for everyone. Especially Hargrove, who stood alone, his authority stripped away in front of a crowd that wouldn't forget. The Sunoco parking lot in Richmond, Virginia, was still buzzing as Officer Michael Hargrove sat in the back of an unmarked FBI sedan, his gun confiscated, his face a mix of shock and defiance. James Carter stood near his SUV, brushing the last of the dust from his suit, his calm demeanor unshaken despite the gun that had been pointed at him minutes earlier. Special Agent Sarah Nguyen and Supervisory Special Agent Daniel Brooks coordinated with 2 other agents, taking statements from the crowd. The morning air carried the scent of gasoline and burnt coffee, but the tension was heavier than ever. Phones were still out, capturing the aftermath, some uploading videos to social media, others calling friends to share what they'd just seen. The older man in flannel handed his footage to an agent, saying, "This needs to get out there." By 9:15 a.m., the first video hit Twitter, posted by a woman in the crowd with the caption, "Cop pulls gun on FBI agent in Richmond. Wrong move." It racked up 10,000 views in under an hour. James stayed out of the spotlight, leaning against his SUV, sipping the Red Bull he'd retrieved from the asphalt. Brooks approached, his gray hair catching the dim light. "You sure you're okay, Carter?" he asked, his voice low. James nodded. "I'm good, sir. Just want to get back to work." Brooks frowned. "This is going to blow up. Media's already sniffing around." NBC's local affiliate called the field office. James's jaw tightened. He'd spent 15 years in the FBI keeping his head down, protecting others without fanfare. Being the story wasn't his style. "Let's handle it through channels," he said. "No press yet." Brooks clapped his shoulder. "Your call. We'll start the report. Hargrove's on ice for now." Across the lot, Hargrove's department monitor flickered as his department liaison, a stocky man named Sergeant Willis, arrived, red-faced and pacing. He glanced at Hargrove in the sedan, then started arguing with Brooks, his voice loud enough for the crowd to hear. "This ain't how we do things in Henrico!" he shouted. Brooks didn't flinch. "Your officer crossed a line. He's lucky he's not arrested." The crowd nodded, a woman in her 60s muttering, "About time someone called them out." Inside the gas station, the clerk, a young woman with pink hair, gave a statement to an agent. "Hargrove's always been a hothead," she said. "Yelled at me once over a soda. I got part of it on my phone, but not much." The agent jotted it down, her face neutral. By noon, the videos had spread like wildfire. Clips showed Hargrove pointing his gun at James kneeling calmly, and Sarah's sharp takedown. Hashtags like #Justice4Carter and #RichmondFBI trended on Twitter. Local news vans rolled up, reporters shoving microphones at anyone who'd talk. A man in a trucker hat shouted, "I saw the whole thing! That cop was out of line!" The story hit national outlets by 2 p.m., NBC, CNN, even Fox News ran the headline, "Virginia Cop Draws Gun on FBI Agent in Tense Standoff." Hargrove's personnel file was dug up, revealing 3 prior complaints for aggressive behavior, all dismissed. His suspension was announced by the Henrico County Sheriff's Office, pending a full investigation. The department's statement called the incident concerning and promised a review of training protocols. It felt hollow to the crowd, who'd seen the truth on their screens. Back at the FBI field office, James sat with Sarah, drafting his report. His phone buzzed, a text from his 14-year-old daughter, Emma. "Dad, saw the video. You okay? Tell your story. People need to hear it." James smiled faintly. Emma always knew how to cut through the noise. He typed back, "I'm fine, kiddo. Thinking about it. Love you." He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The attention wasn't what he wanted, but Emma's words stuck. This wasn't just about him. It was about every person who'd faced a gun or a badge for no reason. That evening, a community group in Richmond organized a town hall, mostly middle-aged and older folks, to discuss the incident. They invited James to speak. He hesitated, but saw Emma's text again. Maybe it was time to say something. Not for the cameras, but for the people who'd stood with him in that lot, phones up, refusing to look away. A week after the tense standoff at the Sunoco in Richmond, Virginia, James Carter stood behind a simple wooden podium in the fellowship hall of Greater Grace Baptist Church on the city's south side. It was a Tuesday evening, the air inside warm with the scent of polished wood and coffee brewing in the corner. About 150 people filled the folding chairs, mostly middle-aged and older folks, their faces a mix of curiosity, anger, and hope. The crowd included retirees in cardigans, small business owners in button-downs, and a few church deacons in suits. Some had seen the viral videos of Officer Michael Hargrove pointing a gun at James, an FBI senior agent, while he knelt calmly in the gas station lot. Others had heard about it from neighbors or caught the story on NBC. No TV cameras were allowed tonight, just a modest PA system and a few smartphones quietly recording. James wasn't in his usual charcoal suit. He wore khakis and a black sweater, sleeves rolled up, his FBI badge nowhere in sight. He looked like a neighbor, not a federal agent, and that was the point. James cleared his throat, his hands resting lightly on the podium. "I've spent my career staying out of the spotlight," he began, his voice steady but warm, like he was talking to family. 15 years in the FBI, plus 4 in the Marines before that. My job's always been to protect people, to blend in, to get things done without making a fuss. But last week I didn't get to choose. The spotlight found me. The room was quiet, every eye on him. A woman in her 60s, her silver hair in a neat bun, nodded slowly, clutching a tissue. James paused, choosing his words carefully. "I wasn't doing anything special that morning, just grabbing a Red Bull to keep me going. I didn't expect to end up on my knees with a gun in my face, but I did expect to be judged before I could open my mouth, and that's what happened." He glanced at the crowd, his eyes catching a man in a faded jacket, maybe 70, who leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Officer Hargrove didn't see an FBI agent," James continued. "He didn't see a father, a veteran, or a guy who grew up 5 miles from that gas station. He saw what he wanted to see, a black man in a suit who didn't belong, and he acted on that, not on evidence." A murmur rippled through the room, not loud, just enough to show they felt it. James's voice stayed even. "I'm not here to tear that officer down. I don't hate him. I don't even feel angry anymore. What I feel is disappointment, deep disappointment, that someone with a badge, someone who swore to serve, could look at me and decide I was a problem before I said a word." The crowd leaned in closer. A woman in a floral dress whispered to her friend, "He's speaking the truth." James took a breath. "You've seen the videos. Some of you recorded them. Thank you for that. But the moment that mattered most wasn't when I was kneeling or when the other agents showed up. It was when I decided who I was going to be, even while someone else was trying to rewrite my story." He paused, his eyes scanning the room. "If I'd raised my voice, moved too fast, or let my frustration show, I might not be here tonight. That's the reality for too many people. And it's why I'm speaking now, not for me, but for them." A soft clap started in the back, spreading until the room filled with quiet applause. James raised a hand, not to stop it, but to keep going. "My daughter Emma, she's 14. She saw the video and asked me, 'Dad, why do people treat us like that when we didn't do anything?' I didn't have an easy answer, but I told her this: when someone lowers the bar, you raise it. When they lose their temper, you hold your ground. You show the world who you are, no matter what they think." The crowd nodded, some wiping tears. A deacon in the front row said, "Amen," loud enough for all to hear. After the talk, James stayed, shaking hands as people approached. An older man, a retired cop with thick glasses, gripped his hand. "I served 28 years in Richmond PD," he said, his voice shaky. "What happened to you? It shames me. But you reminded me what the badge is supposed to mean." James nodded. "That means a lot, sir." Later, as the crowd thinned, a woman in her 70s, her cane tapping the floor, handed him a note. "You made us believe in justice again," it read. James tucked it in his pocket, his heart full. The fallout from the incident didn't stop. Michael Hargrove faced a formal investigation, his suspension extended as his record, 3 prior complaints for aggression, was dissected. The Henrico Sheriff's Office issued a statement calling the event regrettable and promising new training. It wasn't enough for the community, who kept sharing the videos, demanding accountability. James avoided the talk shows and book deals, choosing work over fame. 2 weeks later, he stood in a classroom at the FBI Academy in Quantico, facing young recruits with eager faces. "Your job isn't just about the badge," he told them. "It's about seeing clearly, past assumptions, past fear. One wrong call can't be undone." A recruit asked, "How do you stay calm under pressure like that?" James smiled, small but real. "You don't train for calm. You train for clarity. And clarity comes from knowing who you are." That night, back at his small apartment, James sat on the couch, scrolling through texts. Emma had sent a photo, a drawing of him in his suit, standing tall, with the words, "Be stronger than they expect," in bold marker. "Love you, Dad," she wrote. He replied, "Love you too, kid. Keep pushing me." A news alert popped up. A Washington Post op-ed called his church speech a call for dignity in a divided time. He didn't read it. Instead, he thought of the retired cop, the woman with the note, the crowd that clapped not for a hero but for a man who stood firm. The story wasn't over. It was teaching, spreading, reminding people that justice wasn't just a word. It was a choice, made in moments when the world watched or when no one did. For James, it was enough to know he'd shown Emma, and maybe a few others, that you could carry your truth with quiet strength, and that strength could change more than a single day. James Carter's story didn't end with the headlines or the church hall applause. It lived on in quiet moments, when Emma hugged him tighter, when a recruit at Quantico nodded thoughtfully, or when a stranger shared his speech online. His choice to stay calm, to hold his ground with dignity, showed that strength isn't about shouting or fighting back. It's about knowing who you are, even when someone tries to rewrite your story. In a world quick to judge, James taught us to pause, to see clearly, and to act with purpose. His lesson applies every day. When you face bias, meet it with patience. When others lower the bar, raise yours. You don't need a badge to carry that kind of power, just character. That's what changes hearts. From a gas station lot to a community hall. Stories like James's remind us to stand tall, to listen, and to build a better world one choice at a time. If his journey moved you, subscribe to our channel for more stories that inspire and challenge us to be better. Don't miss out. Hit that button and join us for the next one.